right, y'all, DC's so white. Let's talk about it. So back a couple of weeks ago, my buddy Jay Penumbra put out an article on Comic Beats talking about DC's problem with whiteness, DC's problem with not, putting its all behind characters, and how long DC's actually gone. And he was one of the people that started the hashtag DC's so white. So let's go through the article. Let's talk about it. So he masterfully opens up this article with the 1977 DC comic character, the Black Bomber, which was actually a white guy that would yell Black Power and then turn into a afroed black man that had super strength or something like that. And it's funny because Dwayne McDuffie many years later would actually make fun of this in real time. I mean, this panel explains it. First, I have to say the magic words, Black Power. That's what happens, baby. Meet the Brown Bomber. So when Dwayne McDuffie wrote the character, we called him the Brown Bomber. But this was real. This is real. And I like that he talked about this. Yeah, in the beginning of 2025, it seemed like we were going to get a good year for black characters, but unfortunately, none of these stories ended up being ongoing series. And I know you're going to say, what about Absolute Green Lantern? That is not in the main series. That's what we're talking about. And what you're looking at right here is actually the last book that was a black character that had an ongoing at DC. That was started on Valentine's Day back in 2023, and it only ran for 18 issues. And we have to put this notion to bed right now that black comics don't sell. That is not true. White people love black comics. Like, this isn't even some sort of like political issue where white people aren't allowed to like these characters or anything like that. That is not what anybody is saying. What we're saying is that DC is not doing their due diligence when it comes to promoting these characters that literally everybody wants to see. DC has just made up that these characters don't sell. I like this quote here. The issue isn't demand, it's DC's structure. Their biggest shortcomings fall in three core areas: a lack of promotion, a lack of marketing transparency, and a lack of opportunity. That is what we are asking for, because the comic book industry still heavily relies on the pre-order system. It's something that people don't really understand. I actually saw a video from Ernie the Blurb Without Fear that explains this perfectly.
Now, to get to the narrative of why black comics, supposedly don't sell, the thing is, it's not that they don't. They do. They sell very fucking well when people talk about them, when the companies who make them put them in front of people's faces. And this is kind of, to go back to, to kind of tie it in all around to the other thing I was talking about initially with black comics themselves, because my brain kind of ADHD'd out there for a second, but don't worry, this all kind of fits in. So we're actually not even doubling back on this. The reality is that everybody has to be on board. Everybody has to be on board. As I said earlier, black people are largely probably the biggest audience and buyers of black indie comics. But see, that's the problem. If your black indie comic failed, or your black mainstream comic failed, guess who wasn't buying the book? It was probably everybody else. You see, you can't just advertise to black audiences. You need to advertise to everybody. Like, black comics are the only comics that get held to a different standard than everything else. If a white comic fails, they say, oh, everybody wasn't buying it. Not everybody was buying it. That's what they're going to say. If a black comic fails, you know what they're going to say? Black people weren't buying it. Here's the thing. It's the same across the board. You can't just rely.
And this is them dropping the ball on everything from trade paperbacks to collecting editions. Like, it's not just a single issue problem, it's everything. Okay, so what is the ask? What is DC so white? What is this campaign actually asking for? Okay, so what can DC do to address this before they come up on a time limit? Because we're almost close to, I think, 1,200 days, right? Yeah, as of the time of this recording, we are at 1,183 days, which I don't think that DC is going to make any changes anytime soon. But if they were, this is what we are asking. Launch 1 to 3 titles in DC's mainline continuity with strong creative teams to give them the best chance. Properly promote these series in the same methods used for characters such as Batman and Superman. So, put them everywhere. Give these titles immunity from cancellation for 18 to 24 months. Now, this sounds like it's a big ask, but it's really not. It's not a big ask for us to want to see the characters actually have stories that can grow and see if people latch on to the stories. You can't just let one issue go out and then you go, well, nobody likes this, so we're just going to cancel the entire thing. No, that's not how that works. As in the same vein as Batman and Superman, so that fresh data can be gathered on the sales from multiple avenues like digital and collected editions, not just single pre-orders. So if you head over to dcsowhite.com, this is what you're going to see right here. This is the homepage, and I'm sure this number right here is actually going to be a lot higher by the time you get over to it. But yes, I Am Batman was the last one. That was February 14th, 2023. And yes, we do know about Green Lantern, the Absolute Green Lantern, but that's in the Absolute universe, which is a completely different universe. And the best things that we've gotten are these miniseries. That's what we've gotten. Miniseries, short runs, never giving these characters the life that they deserve. Like Ernie, the Blurb Without Fear, said, it is weird that for some reason when a book with a white main character flops, it's just the fact that, you know, for some reason people didn't like that character, they didn't latch onto him, whatever. It's not a reflection on culture. But when black characters flop, it's, oh, black people must not like comic books because they can't fathom white people enjoying these books. They're not explaining to people how the sales actually work. You have to pre-order the books for that sale to count towards that book. So what happens is when you do your pre-orders or you do your pull list, right? Your pull box that you have, that's a pre-ordered book that your LCS is going to purchase from DC to let them know that they want that book in their store. And I'm sure that they will probably purchase a few more, or some books have actually like incentive numbers. You have to buy 100 in order to get this cover, you have to buy 200 in order to get this cover, etc. So that's when DC counts. That's when DC counts the sales. Is that point before the order cutoff date. If you don't have your order in before that, DC is not going to count it as a sale. And because there's a lack of information surrounding that out in the public, the community doesn't know this readily. That's why when we even try to do campaigns to support books, we're kind of behind the ball if we're past the order date. So at the end of the day, is DC So White absolutely necessary? Yeah, it is. And for everybody who's gonna go, well, why don't we just go out and build our own thing and do all of this? Why are we asking for scraps and blah, blah, blah? We're not asking for scraps, but also, why shouldn't I want to see my favorite characters? Why am I not allowed to have favorite characters? Because DC owns them. So now I'm not allowed to want to see that character. I'm not allowed to care about that character because the man made that character. Come on. Like, that's silly, and we all know that that's silly. We are not asking for too much. No one is asking for too much. That's a cop-out. Yeah, but what do you guys think? Leave it in the comments down below. And remember, I only ask you ever to do 2 things. 1, go drink some water. 2, do something kind. And 3, I'll see you next time. Peace.